Meeting this afternoon, right on the cusp of morning and afternoon. So I'm calling this meeting to order. And our first order of business is the approval or modification of the agenda. Does anybody have any correction? Agenda. Anybody have any items to add to our agenda? Okay. If there are no additions, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Sure. Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. So we have an approved agenda. Our next item of business is public comments. There are still no submitted public comments.
No, Mr. Chairman, no submitted public comments in advance of today's meeting. I would recommend that we call to the audience to see if anybody would like to address the community advisory.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody in the audience who has not submitted a card but would like to address the community advisory? Seeing none, then do we close?
I think you could just go ahead and move on, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, a bit out of order, and I apologize, I should have brought this up under approval of the agenda. If you wouldn't mind, I would like to call for introductions today. Mr. Chairman, as we prepare for the meeting, I shared that our excitement with the new Community Advisory Committee members that are here today and additional ones that will be joining us at our next meeting. Mr. Chairman, I might recommend we just sort of go around the table. If you're a standing member, if you've been here, maybe a quick introduction of your name and who you represent. If this is your first meeting, it might be interesting to just allow everybody to say maybe 15, 20 seconds about themselves, who they represent, as the introduction, and we begin to build this relationship. So that's okay with you, sir?
Yes, sir. I would like very much to do that. We have four, is it 4 or 5?
Yes, that have made their way in, and I would recommend as we go around, we can just let everybody identify themselves. Okay.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Vice Chair, would you like to lead off?
Sure. I'm Bud Curtis from the city of Newport News.
And I should have gave everybody, this is my error, so with these microphones, for the new members, please accept my apologies. When you push the button and it turns red, you're on, you're live, okay? And we do film these for our audience and have them post on the website, so thank you, sir.
Well, if you didn't hear me, I'm Bud Curtis from the city of Newport News.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Frank Katrupi, also Newport News, background as a real estate broker for about 35 years in the area, lived all over the world. Fathered in Chicago, I trade out of Manhattan roads. Again, 35 years selling houses.
Then if I could ask everyone after they're done, if you close the microphone, then it will be slide that. Thank you, sir.
I'm John Kish, representing the city of Chesapeake.
Hello, my name is Brandon Carter. I'm representing the city of Chesapeake. My primary professional experience is in the parking industry. However, I also had a tenure with Zagster, which was the micro-mobility platform that had bike share in the city of Norfolk. So a lot of my interests are related to micro-mobility and other forms of transportation.
Jim Bowie with City Hampton.
I'm Cecil Jenkins, representing the city of Chesapeake, and prior to that, I think it should be top of you. I guess you call your resume. I was 12 years on the city council in Chesapeake, and the good thing is that I left I did not get co-development. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. And I love issues of transportation. Just think of one. That's it.
Jim Collins, this is my first meeting representing Smithfield. Retired military, I currently own a general contracting company and an engineering firm here in Great Bridge.
Rick Dwyer, I'm the Deputy Director of the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Lines, better known as HRPDC, because that's just way too much to say in one breath. And also served on the regional transit advisory panel, talking about how public transit affects the military.
Jim Wofford with Profit Center downtown Norfolk, also a member of the TPO.
Good afternoon, Steve Sterling, Norfolk Airport Authority, and I'll be presenting later in this meeting. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Cheryl Anderson, and I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia.
Hello, everyone. Zakia Anderson, representing Urban League of Hampton Roads and also YWCA of South Hampton Roads, and also a member of the RTAC as well.
Good afternoon, my name is Noelle Pinkert, and I represent Hampton Roads Transit.
Hi, my name is Waverly Woods, and I'm from Virginia Beach. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anthony Pigloski, my first meeting representing Suffolk, and professionally I'm a wealth advisor with Freedom 2 Partners, and I'm excited to be here.
Hi, Kanama Bivens. I'm also representing the city of Suffolk, and this is my first meeting. I'm actually I work on the peninsula. Actually, I am the chief finance officer over at NASA Women Research Center.
Good afternoon, Christian Strange, and represent the city of Norfolk.
Hello, Shantae Howard Spence, 20 years risk management, Virginia Beach, Virginia, and small business owner.
Good afternoon, I'm Keith Kennedy, Deputy Executive Director on the staff here at the Hampton Roads Planning Distribution.
Good afternoon, Pavitra Parthasarathy, staff here at the HRTPO.
And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Crum, the Executive Director here at the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. On behalf of our organizations, I just want to extend a welcome to our new CAC members. I'm really excited about the interest we're receiving, this additional representation from communities that we didn't have represented. Mr. Chairman, the great news is we have 2 to 3 more reps in the approval process that I expect will join us at the June meeting. So we continue to broaden the reach of the CAC. On page number 2 of your agenda, you'll see a little bit of information about our new partners, members of the CAC, so I hope you can take a chance to take a look. Sir, thank you for that step aside from the agenda, but I appreciate your chance to do those introductions. If I might ask, would our staff mind real quick, Dale, just so everybody knows who's in the room, please?
Sure. Dale Stith, I'm staff with the, thanks to meet you.
Dale Stith, staff overseeing the long-range transportation plan development. I've presented, I see some familiar faces in this room, so thank you. Got a couple of new staff here.
Hi, my name is Cal Gilmore, I'm the Transportation Planner 2 with HRTPO.
Vishwani Kalini, Senior Transportation Engineer with the Long Range Transportation Planning Group. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for the introductions, and I'm share Mr. Crum's pleasure in having new members filling formerly vacant positions. This group is intended to serve as a sounding board and a bi-directional communications avenue for what public sentiment is in the region. So the more people we have at the table, the more we can fulfill our responsibilities. Okay, the next item is the summary minutes, which were attachment 5 in the agenda package. Has everybody reviewed the minutes of the February 10th meeting? Have you found anything that needs to be modified in those minutes? Any corrections, additions? Okay. So if there are no amendments to the minutes, may I have a motion to approve them? Thank you, sir. Second? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. As presented. Okay, so we have covered item 5.
Yes.
In our first go round, and item 6, Regional Transit Advisory Panel, RTEP update. Mr. Crum?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, CAC members. It's my pleasure to be in front of you today to share with you the work of our Regional Transit Advisory Panel. I'm going to start off with a little bit of background on how this panel was formed, what its assignment was from the General Assembly, the work the panel completed to provide some recommendations on how to strengthen and advance transit in the Hampton Roads region. But then I'm going to step out of the way and bring up a couple of our RTAP members to share some of their thoughts and passion around this critical issue. Dimitri, let's see if we can get that just a little bigger on the screen. But at last month's CAC meeting, for those who were here, we handed out the brochure that is in front of you today and also distributed in the agenda. But just in case, I made some additional copies for you today. I'm actually going to go through this, that looks like a different version, but that's okay. I'm actually going to go through this brochure that you have in front of you today, and we'll go through and outline that's perfect, Dimitri, thank you, sir. We'll actually go through and use that as our talking points as we move forward. So here's really the background information. In 2020, for the first time in Hampton Roads, the Virginia General Assembly created a dedicated funding source for public transportation. Our HRT transit system really was defined by a budgeting process that was 6 individual budgets that went together and created a bit of a disconnected transit system. It was based on how much money each city funded and really created some challenges for HRT to really run a strong regional interconnected transit system. In 2020, the Virginia General Assembly passed House Bill 1726, Senate Bill 1038. And to move beyond that bureaucracy, what that did is it created something called the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Fund. For the first time, a dedicated funding source of just over $30 million would flow to Hampton Roads. And those monies would be used by the HRT transit system to create an interconnected regional backbone network. The source of funding for the transit fund was about $20 million a year from a statewide transit occupancy tax, or a recordation tax, I should say. And that combined with some local revenue sources is what creates just over $30 million a year that is now flowing to HRT. The idea of the regional backbone system is, I think you're all aware that right now the frustration is that when you ride our buses, number one, it's frequency of service, right? You might have, Christian, I'm a resident of Norfolk too, and as you know, sometimes a bus can come, but you might not see another bus for an hour, right? So it's really hard to be dependable. And for our peninsula partners, as you know, trying to move from the peninsula to the south side can be very time consuming. We have residents, Mr. Curtis, to tell us about it taking 2 hours to be able to do that because we're just not providing HRT the funding they need for a regionally interconnected network. This is our opportunity now. This regional backbone network will be about 13 routes that will interconnect our 6 cities with consistent service times, 15-minute transit service intervals. So for the first time, we'll have 15-minute intervals for these 13 routes. And they're going to have the amenities like bus stops and other things that we need to really provide a system that values our riders and a system that will be attractive to our ridership. Now, there's going to be more work to do with the local routes that need to feed into those regional backbone systems. A lot more work, but Noel's going to talk to you a little later. This is the start and the opportunity to really give HRT the funding opportunity that they've never had before. And you'll see, we'll talk a little bit about what those routes are, but they're going to make sense to you. There are places like Virginia Beach Boulevard where we have a lot of transit ridership. There are places like the areas on the peninsula where you have a lot of ridership happening on Route 60 and other places that we think are going to be, this will be a real benefit to. Well, when the General Assembly took that action, if we could just go down just a little bit, Dimitri, on the screen there, they also took an additional step and said that our organization, the TPO, would form a regional transit advisory panel. And that panel would be comprised, and you can see this right at your place, but Dimitri, if you could, yeah, perfect. Thank you, Dimitri. That this panel would be composed of a broad group of representatives from business, industry, employers, shopping destinations, institutions of higher education, healthcare center, transit entities, et cetera, that would provide ongoing advice to regional transit planning in the Hampton Roads region. So let's go ahead on to that next page here, Dimitri. Perfect. So what we did was we worked with HRT, we worked with WADA, and we worked with the Suffolk Transit Systems. And we put together a pretty comprehensive group of about 60 representatives from our community, a broad cross-section of our community. And you'll see it here as you page through your brochure on these 2 pages. But this group really was a strong group that met in this room 9 times over a 1-year period. They met 9 times and had some conversations about what's working with transit, but frankly, a pretty honest conversation about what's not working with transit in our region. And based on those conversations, they identified 9 topic areas and formed work groups around those 9 topic areas that you'll see in your handout on the 3rd page. Those 9 topic areas were transit-oriented development. What they were very excited about was, now that we know where the 13 regional backbone routes will be, the opportunity to really look at zoning and really start creating density, walkable, transit-oriented mixed-use developments along those regional backbone routes. They talked about affordable housing that we just had a conversation about, Mr. Kish, before the meeting, and said, this would be a great opportunity, again, along those regional backbone routes with 15-minute service to really look at how we encourage that type of housing mix that we want to see and the density in those areas. Bus stop amenities we heard a lot about, right? I mean, how many of you drive down the street and we have a bus pole and there's somebody standing beside it with no shelter, no bus stop, no amenities, really a group that really wanted to dive into that. They identified the need for a group of transit advocacy ambassadors in the region. Too many times when our transit systems go to propose service for transit, they stand alone, right? And they don't have quite the support that they need from the community. So this group really wanted to commit to be in those advocates. Rick, military and transit was a big item. I'm really excited. We had the commanding officers from our major military bases sit on these work groups and really give us tremendous input that we could use. They wanted to really look at our major employment centers and figure out how do you get transit to Newport News Shipbuilding. We heard an awful lot from the hoteliers in Virginia Beach that said they'd love to be able to get workforce, right? And looking at other places in our community where serving these major employment centers could be a priority. One item they were really excited about is the opportunity for what they call the Williamsburg, Virginia Beach Tourism Corridor. The RTAP said, wouldn't it be neat that if somebody, my friends come down from Pennsylvania and they get to Williamsburg, they might not need to get into a vehicle again, right? If you had a transit route that ran from Williamsburg and connected all the great tourism centers the whole way to Virginia Beach, that might be an incredible opportunity for our region. Others talked about technology, and another work group focused on how you serve colleges and universities within our region with better transit service. So everybody self-appointed themselves to these work groups. In addition to the 9 meetings of the RTAP, these work groups each met 3 or 4 times. I helped staff 3 or 4 of them. They all met 4 times and really got down to a lot of detailed work and recommendations. So those recommendations are summarized in your packet, but I just want to take a chance at a moment and refer you to this green statement at the end of the RTAP membership, because I think this statement really captures sort of the passion that this group has. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't like to read slides, but let me just very quickly go over this. The RTAP consists of over 50 representatives from all segments of our region. We collectively believe that an effective, appropriately resourced, and strong performing regional transit system is key to the economic and social well-being of the Hampton Roads region. The 757 region must have a strong regional transit system to compete for jobs and ensure an attractive quality of life for all. The Transit Fund and the advancement of the 757 Express Regional Backbone Network is an exciting step towards our goals. The RTAP membership asks for the assistance of our General Assembly members and local and federal government officials to support measures to continue to strengthen public transit service in our Hampton Roads 757 region. From there, and I won't go through all these, but you'll see their recommendations. These are recommendations that have been sent to the TPO board. They've been sent to HRT. Some of them have already been acted on, and we've seen progress already. That you see their recommendations that they've endorsed as a group by topic area. The top tier of priorities in each topic area, they've shaded in green for you. So I'll let you go through those at your leisure. Some of them we can refer to as we go through question and answers, but this is a good bullet list of some of their recommendations that they would really like to see. So you have those for all those topic areas. And I'll use one example, and Noel could talk about this more, but under the military, one of the things that we heard from the military representatives was that you just can't get a bus to the front of Naval Station Norfolk, right? After you get off the bus, that's a big base that many of you have been on. It's a long way to walk, right? So the CEO, the commanding officer, said what we could really use is a pilot internal circulator. HRT went, found pilot funding, and we're going to implement that, right? So some of these recommendations, we've already seen some exciting progress on. So I'll let you go through all of those. Dimitri, let's go on to the next PowerPoint real quick. The other thing that I wanted to mention before I call up some of the RTAP members to add some additional comments, one of the things that our RTAP really was passionate about was they thought that we haven't quite advocated for transit and transit funding up in Richmond. On February 3rd of this year, we held through the RTAP our first regional transit advocacy day. And some of the people that are in this room are right up there with us, right? We had a full day up in Richmond. We started at 7:30 a.m. and up to about 1:30, spent an entire day with a number of RTAP members, HRT members, WADA members, and other people advocating for transit. We got to speak with 11 General Assembly members and held about a 2.5-hour session where we heard from them. We heard from the Virginia Transit Association, really a day where they were able to articulate to these General Assembly members and Hampton Roads Caucus members the importance of transit in our region. I will tell you that this General Assembly session, there was a proposal to remove the funding I talked about. So that was something that we were very concerned about. I can't thank the RTAP members enough for going up there and making our presence heard and stressing how important this is to our community. While we were up there that day, Rob and Joe were up there and we were YouTubing videos all day. Rick Dwyer, I think you were up there, where we were talking about the importance of transit and pushing that information out all day. The day ended, we were actually recognized and introduced on the floor of the Senate and the floor of the House. So we were really proud about that. We were encouraging people to vote no on the bill that would have removed our transit. Zakiah was up there and others, and pretty effective day that we were really proud of. So I'm going to pause there and maybe ask a couple of our RTEP members to make some comments. Noelle Pinker, who represents HRT, maybe I thought we could start with you, right? And then Zakiah with the Urban League of Hampton Roads, Mr. Wooford from the MacArthur Center, Rick Dwyer from the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance are all RTEP members that are with you today. So I'd like to turn it over to you all, and you could probably just do this if you don't mind from your seat, and we'll let you make a few comments. So Dimitri, I think Noelle has a PowerPoint that she's going to use to walk through.
Thank you so much, Bob, and thank you, members of the CAC, for having us here today. I did bring a short PowerPoint. I wanted to give you a little bit more information about the 757 Express program that we are going to be implementing at HRT starting this October. We're real excited about those 13 regional backbone express and commuter routes that we're going to be initiating first on the peninsula starting in October. But as you all know, Hampton Roads is a global gateway and an economic engine for Virginia. And our regional success is very much dependent on having well-performing transportation, including public transit. Every citizen in this area and in the Commonwealth at large deserves access to safe and reliable and affordable transportation options. And that's what this regional backbone program is intended to do. As Bob mentioned, in 2020, the General Assembly created the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Program, which is something that the RTAP was also created to support and enhance. Really what they were trying to do is connect our region better through public transportation, infrastructure, rolling stock, and support facilities to have we were selecting the ones that would have the greatest impact on the citizens in Hampton Roads that are also environmentally sustainable and would improve the quality of life for not only our current riders, but for future riders that would choose to use transit because it's more efficient than it is now. Our funding for the Regional Transit Fund, as Bob mentioned, comes from a combination of the Regional Grantors Tax, the Regional Transient Occupancy Tax, and we get $20 million from state recordation taxes that comes off the top of the state pot. And what this funding is going to be used for is the 757 Express. This is going to be a regional transit system. It includes top regional priorities of having this more reliable interjurisdiction bus service. As Bob mentioned, up until 2020, we had 6 cities that had 6 different ideas of what transit should be in their respective areas, and it's very difficult for people who use the transit system to get from city to city and definitely from south side to the peninsula. And we're trying to address that in this 757 Express program. We have 13 regional backbone routes, and then we're going to have enhanced limited express routes, which an express route starts at point A and doesn't stop until it gets to its destination, and it's used for commuters, services, for the Newport News shipyard, for the Naval Station Norfolk. And we will have new commuter routes that go from areas in Hampton Roads out to Suffolk to some of the new, like the Amazon warehouses out there. So we're so excited and appreciative of this funding. This is a map, and I apologize for it being so small, but I had to get it onto the PowerPoint that shows those 13 regional routes. As I mentioned, we're starting in October on the peninsula, on the Jefferson Avenue corridor, which is the green corridor you see, and Mercury Boulevard. and that max route to Newport News Shipbuilding. These 13 backbone routes are going to have a significant impact. We're going to have 13 routes that have that 15-minute headway service that Bob mentioned, so that if you miss the bus, you do not have to wait 30 minutes and most likely 60 minutes for the next bus. But during peak time, those buses would come in 15-minute increments. We hope that this is going to attract choice riders and improve service for our existing needed riders that depend on our service to get to work, to get to doctor's appointments, to get their children to childcare, and to get to educational and other opportunities. Our population served is going to increase from 181,000 to 487,000, which is a 169% increase. When our service is fully implemented, the job served is going to increase from 137,500 to 312,500, which is a 127% increase. Areas in walking distance of public transportation are going to increase to 115 square miles, which is a 180% increase. And total ridership is expected to increase from 36,200 to 36,200 to 54,500. So this express service is going to have a huge impact on the community. Part of the program includes 48 new buses that we have on order to fully implement the service. We also are increasing our amenities throughout the service area. We're going to have 623 new bus shelters by the time the program is fully implemented. As of to date, we've implemented over 150 new shelters in the past year. These shelters have benches, trash receptacles, and solar lighting for safety. This really provides an opportunity for HRT to provide dignity to the riders. I can't tell you how many times I've gone by a bus stop, and I'm sure you have as well. You see someone sitting on an overturned grocery cart or standing in the rain. And this is just not acceptable. So we're really enhancing those amenities. We're going to have new bus transfer facilities that have dedicated pull-offs as well as operator restrooms. And we're going to be relocating and replacing the 35-year-old trolley barn on Parks Avenue down at the ocean front. And most recently, we've been very happy and excited. Congresswoman Luria was able to secure a $5 million earmark for that project. And we'll be having a press conference with the Congresswoman next week on Thursday, and I'm forwarding an invitation to Mr. Crum, and he could forward that to the committee if anyone's interested in coming out. Technology is something that riders expect, and we should be providing. We currently have real-time bus arrival information on our website, but we are going to be adding trip planning applications as well as mobile ticketing. So that's going to be of ease to the customers, as well as reducing HRT costs and county fares. That's a big cost that people don't really think about. The complete regional transit system will provide better reliability, faster commutes, and new connections for our riders. And in conclusion, you may never ride an HRT bus. You might not depend on public transportation, but chances are you depend on somebody who does. More than 60% of all trips are taken by people going to and from work and school. We thank you so much for your support, and we're so excited to be able to provide this new and enhanced service to the region. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Noel. Real quick, before I ask a couple of our RTAP members for some comments, the $20 million off the top of the statewide recordation tax that's coming to Hampton Roads, Northern Virginia has been receiving for a long time, right, Noel?
That's absolutely correct.
So this is the first time, so all that transit you see up in Northern Virginia was being paid for out of that statewide fund. So big opportunity for Hampton Roads. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a couple of our RTAP members. Sakai, I understand you've been so engaged and works with us up in Richmond, as well as Mr. Wolfer from Parker Center and Rick Clark from Pahrump. I'd like to ask you all if you have any additional comments.
Yes, thank you so much, Bob. Again, Zakia Anderson from Urban League Hampton Roads, but also represent YWCA South Hampton Roads. Noel, that was like amazing. And so like all of my notes just kind of say yes. But I will again speak to kind of the pieces that are human services focused, right? So my background is in looking at housing, affordable housing, evictions, and also just working with our most vulnerable populations that are in the Hampton Roads region and figuring out how we can be more equitable and affordable for them. And so bottom line is that we are not doing that right now. We are not servicing or providing equitable and accessible service for the folks that need it the most. Noel said 60% of the folks that are writing HRT are utilizing it for work or school. But what I also want to bring to the forefront is that the folks that we're talking about also should be allowed to be entertained, right? They should be allowed to be able to go to the beach, the parks, the movies, things of that nature. And so looking at the humanity of folks and talking about how they should also be uplifted and dignified and what we're doing in these rooms. When a lot of us maybe aren't riding public transit because we are choice riders, right? But we're talking about folks who need to ride transit. I shared a story at one of our RTAP meetings of a client that I worked with in a previous position, a homeless service agency, who worked about 7 minutes drive from the cookout that she got a job from. That job, however, in walking distance was about an hour away, right? Walking in or riding public transit. And so what are we telling that parent, that caregiver, right? You went to go find a job, you were already experiencing a traumatic incident, homelessness is just one of them. Maybe she's gone through domestic violence, sexual assault, who knows what's happening with her, right? But she found a job, she worked with an agency, found the job, but can't get to and from work efficiently. And we're talking about a position that isn't even above the living wage where it should be at around 22 bucks an hour. And she's having to walk back after her shift in that same, we call it the last mile, is that correct, Noel? Is the walking path even stable for her? Are there lights along her path? So we're talking about situations in which we are inviting people to be more active in things that are happening to them in their lives, and not thinking about what we can do as folks that are at these tables, that are policymakers, that are decision makers, to make that commute for them more affordable, accessible, and then equitable. And then I'll just, I'll close with, again, I just started my role at YWCA about 3 weeks ago. And the stories that I'm hearing, Bob, I can't even explain to you all in this little snippet that I have how disheartening it is to learn about what we aren't doing again for those vulnerable populations and eliminating just one barrier to access, just one of them. And I really thank the HRT for what that you all are doing to listen to community and to bring that back to action. But eliminating just one barrier to access, transit being one of them, could drastically improve how these folks are able to find jobs, to get training, to complete their education. Because as Noel said, if I can't even get my child to school or to childcare, I can't even go on job interviews. I can't look for housing. And looking for housing in this market right now, if you're buying a house is difficult. If you're looking to rent, it's even more difficult. And then I have children, I have evictions, I don't have my own funding because I've never been able to work because my partner, who is also my abuser, ruined my credit. But I can't even get on the bus to get to and from where I have to go. It's unacceptable, right? And so what we have to do as folks that are in these rooms and folks that have voices and positions of power, we have to make sure that at the end of the day, we are looking back to the folks who need us to advocate for them because they can't hear themselves. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Wolford, anything that you wanted to add, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Bob, and the CAC for inviting us. You know, I think we all know the history of transportation, starting with stagecoaches, starting with railroad, and starting with highways, interstates. And the reason behind that was economic development. Wherever the transportation access was easiest, you had economic development and you had residential. Well, right now we're faced with another component that having reliable, dependable transit equates to. I think every city suffers with retention. you know, the best and the brightest are leaving our area, going to New York, Washington, DC, Atlanta, because it's easy for them, the millennials, to commute. They much rather get on a bike, get on a light rail, get on a bus, than even try to drive a car. My kids, believe it or not, they were both adults, before they even wanted to get a driver's license. I'm like, really? And that, when we were growing up, the first thing you wanted was a driver's license. So I can understand that. But today, I think what HRT and what TPO and what we're trying to do is create an environment where folks want to stay in Hampton Roads because there's easy transportation, because I can go to a movie or go downtown or go to city center. I live out in Suffolk, by the way, and I can tell you, there's no way I would get to downtown Norfolk if I depended on transit to get me there at a reasonable time for a meeting or just to be there. So I think we all are convicted, and I think we all are on the same page when we know that transit is the key. Affordable transit as well as reliable transit is the key to build Hampton Roads into one mega region that people and our kids want to come back to, stay, have jobs, and build homes and families. So that's why I'm here, because I think our job is to make it better for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Really appreciate it. Rick, you represent the military perspective on this topic.
Sure, and like other folks here, transportation options are important to the military here in the region. And I think everybody in here probably understands how important the military and the federal sector is to our region's economy. You know, 40 to 45% of our economy is based on that federal sector. So giving those people, not only the military service members, but the civilians that work on these installations, options when it comes to transportation and commuting is important. A lot of the young service members that are on these installations, if they're married, their spouse is probably also working. They don't make a lot of money, so maybe there's only one family vehicle. So having that reliable transportation you can count on, they will use it. I myself, when I was stationed at the Pentagon, used public transportation because I could count on it. I knew that if I lived 10 minutes from one of the metro parking lots, I could get there, and within 10 minutes I'd be on a train, and within about 25 minutes I could be sitting at my desk at the Pentagon. So if we can provide that same type of reliability and frequency throughout the region here, I think you'll see a lot of military members and their families using that transportation. Just one more option to give them to get to these major employment centers.
Thank you, Rick. Mr. Chairman, I will turn it back over to you. I wanted to have the opportunity to share the perspective, the recommendations of the RTAP and some of our members. We're looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, presenters. Thank you, Mr. Crump, for introducing the topic. CAC members, this is an opportunity for you to pose questions if you have any. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have if we had broken them up into different, I have comments about everyone's presentation or questions rather. I agree that we need to provide dignity for people to be able to get a job, especially when they've gone through some hardship of various kinds. And the dignity of being able to get to a job is critical. The dignity of being able to take care of your children is critical. So to a job, absolutely. I'm a little concerned about paying for entertainment transportation because I hear there's a lot of projects. And I just think that at some point in the budget, we've got to be able to focus on what's critical and what's just a benefit. So I'm concerned about that kind of money that would be spent on transportation to entertainment.
May I comment real quickly on that? Just so the backbone, the express will focus on employment centers.
Okay, yes, good. That's all, because I just was listening to your presentation and it was great, by the way. And I do like ramping up the bus service. I think that was, it's a much more feasible idea. The folks in Virginia Beach clearly did not want light rail. Many people talked about ramping up the bus service. They even talked about putting free Wi-Fi on the bus service. for people that are commuting from work and home, and they can actually do work projects perhaps. So that's an idea if you haven't considered it. I'm not sure it seemed a little vague about the businesses that you were talking about with amenities. And I mean, shelter, trash, proper benches, absolutely. But what part of businesses would be playing into that transient?
Some businesses have expressed an interest in cooperative efforts for park and ride. In fact, a couple of our chambers of commerce have begun to engage those business owners. Some of them are quite excited to be along the backbone route, and if they, and some of them already own like big box, big parking lots. They're saying, wow, you know, we love those big parking lots about 5 days a year, but the rest of the time they're not real filled up. So what some of them have said is, we might be interested in a partnership where we would have a park and ride location. So I come to work, I park there, I take the bus home. My wife texts me on the way home, picks some things up on the way home. When I get back to the park and ride, I go in and I buy those things and then continue on my way home.
So you're talking about like a grocery store or something along those?
Well, several types of businesses, like the big box retails, the grocery stores, even the Walmarts. We've heard interest from Lowe's and other places have said, now that we know where these backbone routes are, we might be interested in cooperation. And they see that if they can provide a place for a bus stop, that's business development.
Absolutely. No, I get that. I just didn't know what level of cooperation, like they're just gonna let you put one in there, a park and ride in their parking lot, or?
Fully volunteer. Honestly, we're getting some requests that frankly might be more than HRT could even accommodate, but fully volunteer, up to the businesses, but we're hearing interest from them through the chambers of commerce.
Okay, I'd be interested to hear more specifics on that, just for that.
Absolutely.
The other thing, the one meeting that we talked about was the new state park system that you were putting, it was an idea, routing it through even Williamsburg, Newport News, and there's a specific section in Virginia Beach, which was originally the light rail section. Is any of that connected to what you're talking about now? Because it's two separate projects.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Yes, so we have worked with the Virginia Beach staff and looked at opportunities of that right of way that you're referring to being a pedestrian opportunity. And even exploring, we did submit one proposal for a grant. We weren't successful, but we're going to stay at it. We're going to look for other options. I think the connection is that, as Noel will tell you, we all know every transit rider starts as a pedestrian or a bike rider, typically. So, I think that we see those trails being part and parcel with a good interconnected transit system, because it allows us to walk safely to be able to get to those transit routes. So I would say that that's still very much at play for a walking area.
Okay, and I liked the park idea that you presented to us before, because I told you I was a big equestrian, and a lot of those areas would be perfect for the horse community, obviously not through the middle of a city. But my concern or question is if it's supposed to be a part of the park project that you're referring to, that we did another presentation on, and or this transit connecting, it's like that same area is going to be getting funding from both of those. It seems like it's a little more double dipping. Is it going to be for just public transit area, or is it going to be a part of some kind of state park program that you're putting together?
So the trail system would be a different source of funding and separate from another.
Right, but it won't be funding the same area.
No.
Okay, that was what I was talking about. Is it that same strip that you were referring to in Virginia Beach?
Right, this would be on their backbone system, and Noel, I'll leave you speak to that if you like, but it really goes down Virginia Beach Boulevard.
Okay, and I'm very familiar with Virginia Beach Boulevard, so I know exactly what, and that's what I wanted to make sure of. So, and then the actual cost, I know we've done probably studies, and it's probably not in here, and maybe it's not even complete, but on the actual cost of each rider. So if each person in here were to be on any of these transit systems, there's an actual cost, and then there's a subsidy that's being added to it, because, you know, most public transportation people are not paying the actual cost.
There's none.
Right. So is the whole thing free? How much is it going to be subsidized, you know, from the taxpayers? I think that's a fair question.
If I might insert myself into the conversation, and I certainly respect everybody's time here. Ms. Woods, I'd like you to hold any further questions until, and we'll get an answer.
Yeah, that's fine. If you just put
Any
my
further-
question on the tail end, you already heard it. You can just answer it after everyone else has had an opportunity. I'm fine with that.
I'd like the continuity of the answer coming together with the question, so, anybody who wants to, address that, please do.
If you want to address it now, that's fine. I'm happy for that. That was actually my last question too, so if anybody can address the subsidies.
So ridership, fare box returns typically pay 18% of the total cost. So the rest is subsidized. And there's no transit agency in the country that recovers all of their operating costs from fare box.
No, I just wanted to.
Yeah, so it's 18%, and I can get more information on the cost per rider. I don't.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
looking for,
I'm
the
happy to
specific
do that.
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Howard Spence, did you have a question?
I was just gonna ask about the technology piece and how you're leveraging the data points that we have with ride sharing and, you know, with Facebook, social media, a lot of information is captured where people have been, where they're going, where they hope to go. So how are we leveraging that type of data to understand what the current needs are and anticipated needs are?
Thank you for the question. A few years ago, we did a ridership survey and a community survey of where people wanted to go. And then when we used those results in combination with current ridership data to develop those 13 backbone routes. So there was a demonstrated need in those areas to have that increased frequency.
What year was that?
I just started 6 months ago, but I can get that information for you. It was before my time. I apologize.
That's follow up, I'll work with Noel on.
Yeah.
Push that information out, it's a good question.
So, were there any hands on the side? I was looking over this way, trying to get.
Christian.
Yes, I get to. Just want to be sure that I'm giving the whole room an opportunity. So, Mr. Strange?
Thank you. And I'm not sure who to address this to, but I've been a long time HRT bus and light rail rider. Try to find more ways to do that every day. And I love the plan. I think it's fantastic. And I'm wondering about the partnership between the plan and the localities, and I'll be specific. So I live up on North Military Highway, and I think we're going to be getting bus rapid transit. So in my mind, we'll have BRT in the middle and the buses going down the side. But people can't walk to the bus stops. So and that's not an HRT issue, that's a city issue. So what is the partnership between the plan and the cities to help bring that all together?
So I'll take a shot at that to start, okay? Victor and I were smiling because, Christian, I felt like you read our proposed work plan for the upcoming year. So the nice thing about the backbone network being set is there's so many things we can start to think about related to that network. So one of the things that we're going to start looking at in partnership with HRT is the walkability analysis around these bus stops now, and what we can be thinking, because we know there's gaps, right? And we know it's not always safe to walk or bike to those stops. So what we're excited to do with our work program this coming year is start doing that. And frankly, we view you as a key part of that. We were thinking that the CAC could really be incredibly helpful to us as we looked at, many people call them walkability audits, but you know your communities. And if we start identifying those stops around the proposed backbone route, getting your input of where it's good, where it's not so good, and what are ideas for improvement. So
Yeah, well, let me know when you need help with that.
We are gonna need a lot of help, but that's a great opportunity then. And then the good news is, you know, of course, as you all know, in some cases it's structural, like a sidewalk. In other cases, it's, you know, a pedestrian crosswalk or a pedestrian signal. But we're not talking about, many times we come to you with hundreds of millions of dollars needed to do certain things. The fun part about this is, you know, there are programs that we know about to get access to funding to make a difference. So that's a coming attraction as we start the new fiscal year. We'd really like to start that here at the CAC, if you can be a part of that. So, Pavitra, anything you wanted to add, Anthony?
No, I think you covered it. The one other thing I would mention is, as part of our current work program, we were doing a multimodal audit of safe routes to school, looking at our specific schools in Hampton. So the Bishoy who was here earlier, he was working on it. So what we're trying to do is kind of use that as well and kind of make sure our programs are talking to each other so we're not duplicating. So that's something we also are looking into. So we have some tools that are more on a map, but as Bob said, the more we can work with you all, because you know the area way better than we would behind the computers.
Fantastic, thank you.
Mr. Carter?
Yes, sir. Just getting into the last mile, is there any plans to partner with an additional micromobility platform? Thinking something like City Bike or Capital Bike, like what they have in New York City or Washington, DC.
So I think, you know, we talked about the micro transit connections, that we haven't really, and see, this is what's great about this input from the CAC. And I think that's a great suggestion that honestly, we haven't got to that point yet, but I think that could be really exciting opportunity for us to look at. Mr. Chairman, we were talking about the benefit of the CAC's input, and that's exactly the type of input that helps us in terms of moving move forward. So maybe that's something we can circle back with. Yes, I do think that's a great suggestion.
Yes, I just like to say to Mr. Christian, we definitely, I was part of the work group that worked on, talked about being ambassadors and advocacy for transit. And I think you'd be a perfect candidate to help us be able to get real-time information on becoming an advocate. But we kind of coined the phrase HRT, the HRT Army, people that are out there advocating for light rail and for stops. And I think you'd be a great addition to that conversation.
Thank you. Again, happy to help out. I want to be part of the Army. When I see bus stops that are, what did I see the other day? It was an old office chair somebody had put out there to sit on. And I thought, man, this is not good at all. So yeah, I'm glad to be part of your Army.
Oh, awesome.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Gibbons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is in regards to, so you said you had ordered how many buses? I apologize. 48 buses. So I know right now here locally, we have a critical shortage for bus drivers. I'm just wondering about the recruitment strategy that you're considering or training. Like, what are the incentives, I think, to be able to actually, you know, keep those buses going every 15 minutes?
Thank you so much for the question. We do have a shortage, but it's better than it was 6 months ago. And we were concerned about being able to start the 757 Express in October because of that shortage, but we do offer sign-on bonuses, we offer referral bonuses, and we just got a grant for American Rescue Plan additional funding that we might be able to even increase those from the federal government because of COVID-related bus operator shortages. So we're doing better, but it's still a challenge. I'm sure you've seen our media. We've got billboards. We're in the newspaper. We don't have TV ads. Those are kind of cost prohibitive, but social media, I mean, we're really working hard to get more people into work at the HRT itself.
Okay, I may have missed this in printed material, but what kind of time frame are we talking about for putting this in place?
Thank you for that question. The first routes are gonna start in October, then there's two more. It's a three-pronged route structure. So part A starts in October, part B starts next fiscal year, and then part C follows in the following February. So February of '24 would be the last of the three to start.
And how are those prioritized?
They were part of the survey study and working with the cities, and like the need was greater initially on the peninsula, but then part B and C are on the south side.
If I may, Mr. Chairman? Also, one of the things that I wanted to remind everybody is that as HRT gets this set up on the south side, our Hampton Roads Ridge Tunnel project, which will be finished in 2025. Remember the express lanes, the buses are going to be able to ride. So not only do we have these 15-minute service intervals, but you're going to have the buses be able to move people pretty competitively in the automobile to and from the peninsula and the south side, which is really something that we've never had as a region. So first off, thank you, everybody. Great input, great questions. We have some follow-up I'll work with Noel on. The one thing I did want to bring up, Mr. Wolford and Mr. Doppler and Ms. Anderson, thank you for being here. The engagement of our RTAP has been unbelievable. Every time we have a meeting, they put 50 to 60 people in this room, and while we talk for, it's in-depth conversation. And they've been coming with us all around the community as we share their recommendations. The one thing, Mr. Wolford, I think we've heard this repeatedly from the business representatives, is this is really an economic development issue right now for us. I can tell you, and we've been in the rooms, there are some people that have looked at our region that are major job creators that haven't come here because our transit system's not what they're looking for. I think you all know that as metropolitan regions, we are in a battle for workforce. It's about workforce and workforce. And the workforce that these companies are looking for, they want choices. Some of them like automobiles, but others want other choices for how to move around our region. And more of these companies are including on their checklist, is it a strong transit system? So we're really excited about what HRT is advancing here, and really appreciate the RTAP members coming. And Mr. Chairman, I just appreciate the CAC's input. There's some great things we can follow up on, and really look forward to talking about walkability as a coming attraction, or lack thereof, around some of these transit zones. So, sir, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to add that the conversation doesn't end when we move on to the next item. You are welcome at all times to submit any questions that may occur to you following this meeting. And we have the resources to get answers to them. So I want to echo Mr. Crumb's thanks to those of you who presented today, and to my fellow members who raised questions in the discussion.
Thank you for allowing us to speak today. We appreciate it.
So we're ready for item 7?
Yes, I'm really excited today. We have with us Mr. Stephen Sterling from the Norfolk International Airport. And I know there's so much going on that you're reading about in the paper, new airlines coming to Norfolk, more direct flights, things happening with on-site facilities planning. So we thought this would be a great opportunity for you to have a check-in with one of our international airports today. Our plans are at our next meeting, you'll hear from Ms. Williams, our representatives. But Mr. Sterling, we're really excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Crum. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and the conversation leading up to this is very interesting. And Appreciate the contributions that each of you make towards the regional transportation efforts. My name is Steve Sterling, and I'm a Deputy Executive Director. I oversee the administration and operations of the airport. I have been with the airport for a little over 14 years. I entered there as the police chief, and then eventually sought an opportunity as a director of operations. So I got more out of the law enforcement security part and more into the FAA and airport operating standards. And then eventually was blessed to be promoted to Deputy Executive Director, where I oversee a lot of those duties and then more on the administration, contract, tenant to management types of duties. What I hope to do is to talk a little bit today about just some of the recent improvements and new news at the airport, kind of give a real high-level overview, and then allow some questions and answers later that you may have more specific questions about the airport. I do my best to answer those. I'm going to go through a PowerPoint, just one for some illustrations, and secondly some talking points. There may be a couple of slides that I need to use my pointer, so I do my best to remember to point it out on both screens. So a little bit about the airport, just some fundamentals. We look at Norfolk International Airport as the facility itself, and then the Norfolk Airport Authority is the entity that operates the airport. We are a political subdivision in the Commonwealth of Virginia, so we're very much like our own city within the city. We have our own police department, we have a fire department, we have our own, what would be your public works department. We do our own snow removal, our maintenance and whatnot. So we operate as our own entity. And then we are governed by a 9-member board of commissioners who are each appointed by the Norfolk City Council. All of our revenues that we use to provide expenses are generated on the airport. So when you pay to park, when you go through the airport, and perhaps you have a meal, a portion of that goes towards our operating revenue. And then all of that revenue is used for generating or for paying for our expenses. So we're really self-sustainable here at the airport in terms of our operational expenses. We do receive some funding for capital improvements, but in terms of operations and daily expenses, those are all generated by on-airport revenues. We don't receive any local taxes for support of the operation. And then we have the full authority to design, plan, construct, and all of our facilities without the city oversight. We certainly partner with them. We certainly go through the inspection processes and whatnot, but we are pretty much a standalone facility. One of the big pieces of news that we are in the middle of now is our CEO transition. As many of you know, Mr. Robert Bowen, he's been at the airport for probably close to 40 years, with the airport authority for 34 years. He's retiring effective May 1st. So he'll be with us for a couple more weeks. And then we're excited to have our new CEO. The board has selected Mr. Mark Perryman. Mr. Perryman was formerly the CEO of Landerman Brown, which is an aviation consulting firm. So we're looking forward to his utilizing his experience and capitalizing on that. So that transition is going to probably start on Monday with a 2-week transition period, and then Mr. Perryman takes the helm on May 1st. This is kind of a snapshot of our activity. In 2021, we had 7 airlines provided 20,000 departures with 2.2 million seats from Norfolk to 35 destination airports. So that's, one of the metrics that we use is how many seats are flying out. You got how many passengers are flying out, and how many seats are flying out. And in an ideal world, all the seats are full, and those are the same. But that's the capacity of departing flights. And then, as an origin and destination airport, which we are, so you have some airports that are primary hub airports where passengers fly into, then they connect to a flight and they fly out of. We are primarily known as an origin and destination airport, which means 98, 99% of the people that fly out of Norfolk originate their flight in Norfolk, and that same amount flying into Norfolk. Norfolk is their destination, or the region is their destination, so to speak. And then we are ranked in the top 14% of commercial airports in 2021, and we had a total of 3.3 million passengers served. That's not a great year to be comparing because we did go through the pandemic and had the associated downturn. But nevertheless, we did, I have a slide later on that'll show that we fared much better than the national average. This is a snapshot of really the airline market share. And as you can see, the big four that we've referred to, the legacy airlines, the American, the Delta, the Southwest, provided 93% of our passenger traffic. And then the ultra low cost carriers, Breeze and Frontier and Allegiant, provided that other 7%. This is our local, our passenger traffic. And the slide here shows our, really our recovery from the pandemic. You'll see there in 2019, we were 19,000 passengers short of 4 million. 2019 for us was a record year in our 81-year history then. We never handled that many passengers in our whole history. So before the pandemic, we had the momentum, we had air service was growing and life was great. And then all of a sudden that March 2020 struck. And you'll see, in 2020, our passenger traffic took a huge hit. And a good number of those passengers were January, February, and the first part of March. But it dried up pretty substantially. We got down to probably 200 passengers a day coming through the airport. It was pretty eerie. And then they started, we started resuming a lot of the leisure traffic towards the end of 2020. And then you see in 2021, we recovered up to a point of 83% of that record year we had. And, a lot of times we try to compare ourselves to pre-pandemic, which was 2019, but we also have to remind ourselves that that too was a record year for us. Even if we were to go back to 2015 and 2016, our recovery based on those years are much, much greater and much more closer to the 100% level. But comparing to a record year where in 2021, at 83% of that, we feel is very good, especially when the national average is 10% lower than that. These are our destination airports, and by destination airports, we don't mean destination cities. There may be some cities or regions that are served by more than one airport. But you'll see in 2022, we'll have more destinations than we've ever had, with 39 destinations. And a lot of that is credited to the addition of Breeze Airways. They had their markets that they have come to Norfolk in, and they don't compete a lot with the legacy airlines. They provide nonstop service to very popular destinations that are not being currently served. So we're looking at, after the most recent announcements begin, we'll be looking at 39 destinations in Norfolk. And you can see in 2020, we were at 30, and it was June of 2021 that Breeze Airways came and just started adding more and more destinations. That's just a snapshot of really our route map. To note here, you have your two out far west, the Los Angeles and the Las Vegas routes. Those are going to be starting here in the early or late spring. And we're grateful to have those. We have been lobbying time and again for nonstop West Coast traffic, and it's very difficult to get airlines to provide that. So we're fortunate. Breeze Airways, they're going to be taking possession of brand new Airbus 220s, which is a much more efficient aircraft. They're going to have 3 different levels of seating. Whereas in your legacy, you've got your economy versus your first class. Breeze has your nicer and nicest. So the A220 is going to bring with them the ability to have the nicest seats, which is more room and more comfort. So that's pretty much where we are in the air service. Things are going well. We do anticipate, backing up a couple of slides there, we do anticipate, looking at 2021 at 3.3 million, we anticipate this year that we'll be over 4 million passengers. We're anticipating this year to set a new record. And, that's it. I can just look at right before I came in here today, we got our March numbers. And on March, passenger figures exceeded March of 2019. So, and that's considering the new West Coast routes have not even yet begun. So we're hoping that as those grow, we're going to see, we're counting on seeing more than 4 million passengers this year. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about the facilities update. As you may have heard or seen in the news over the last couple of years, we've been working on a master plan. And basically what the master plan does for us is it takes a look at our current facilities, the capacity, the condition, et cetera. And then it looks at the forecast of passengers. How many passengers do we anticipate having over the next 20 years? It looks at the type of aircraft being used over the next 20 years. And then it identifies the facilities to meet that needs. And then we look at the gap, and then we identify alternatives to improve our facilities. So we've completed that process, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the projects that we're working on now that we anticipate coming soon. This is a pretty busy map here, but what I want to focus on this one is, for those of you looking that way, it's going to be this. So this is our primary runway, and this is our crosswind runway. We call it 1432. That's planned to be decommissioned. So I'll be talking about that area in particular. For those of you looking this way, this is our cross runway that we're looking to decommission. In the master plan, we studied that pretty hard. We did a lot of research and public outreach, and at the end of the day, the next slide, I'll be able to show you how we're really constrained with our land. So we have to maximize the use of the land that we have. The cross runway is only 4,875 feet of pavement. And because of the safety area limitations we had to reduce the operating capacity of that runway down to sometimes 3,900 feet. And that really only serves, really small pleasure aircraft, and it doesn't even serve most of our corporate jet activity. So we've made the decision to decommission that runway and make better use of that land. So this is the airport in an overview, and you just see the talking point here is just the constraints we have. We're surrounded by Lake Whitehurst on most of it. We've got 64 on this side, and then we have the outlet mall here, the Burton Station area, and then the industrial park. So there's really not much room to grow, so to speak. And in an airport, you can't grow but so high before you start penetrating the critical airspace. So we've got to make the decisions to have on how we maximize the use of our land. Zooming in a little bit on that, and we'll talk about this a little bit. This is the cross runway currently that we're looking to decommission. And as you're looking that way, it's this one. And so what we're looking to do, this is our so this is the main terminal facility. This is our cargo facility. And down in this area is our fixed base operations where our corporate aircraft and private aircraft operate. And we feel that if we can decommission this runway and then open up this land for development, we can expand the cargo operation into this area as well. And by the way, with the runway here, there are limitations on how we park aircraft at the current facility. So if we can decommission this runway, then we can park aircraft in a different configuration and increase the capacity in the current framework that we have. And then on the bottom, we want to expand our fixed base operations. Our corporate hangars are currently full. A lot of our tenants have been increasing the size of their aircraft. Of course, when you increase that with limited hangar space, you reduce the number that you can get in there. So we've got a pretty good waiting list for there. and we want to be able to construct more hangar space. And again, by decommissioning the cross runway, we can take advantage of this property down here and construct additional hangar space for either aircraft storage or aircraft maintenance facilities. So that's kind of what our next steps are. And the first step to all of that is going to be to decommission the runway. And that comes with it a process that could take a couple of years. It'll start with an environmental study. And then after that, we'll have to get into design and then construction to decommission it. So that's what the current effort is. And then once we are able to decommission it, then we can start increasing the parking capacity of the cargo facility. The other thing we're looking to do is with, you saw on one of the previous slides that we're up to 39 departures. We've got we got 7 airlines now. We're starting to run out of space for overnight aircraft parking. And that's become a real challenge for us. So we are looking to convert an old parking lot. This used to be, years ago before I came there, many years, the old terminal apron. And it's currently a parking lot. And we're looking to convert that into aircraft parking so that aircraft can, deplane passengers at the gate. And if they're going to stay overnight, then they can park here and then open up some of the gates for additional operations. We also are looking at a concept of expanding our Concourse A to add about 5 or 6 more gates. And again, it's in response to the increased operations that we're having now. And then with respect to international flights, that's something we always have been struggling to get here. And but we do have to upgrade our customs facilities before we can have scheduled international flights. So when customs notified us of that requirement, we then created a project to renovate those facilities, to update them. This slide is our parking garage, and this is just another angle of that aircraft parking space that we have right here we want to create. And we just built our garage D over the last couple of years. That was a $68 million project that added over 3,200 parking spaces. And we really weren't looking to add parking spaces, but the intent of that was to relocate all of this parking lot, which was a little over 2,100 spaces, over to the garage so that we can convert this parking lot to a combination of aircraft parking and then reserve it for our future Concourse C, should we build that out. So this is now constructed, open, and beautiful. If you are parking in the long-term part of the garages at the airport, I'd advise you check that out. It's much more open. The spaces are wider. You can comfortably park between two cars and not worry about getting anything. So great place. So then historically, airports have been very good at planning for the facilities through the master planning process. Airports generally have been slower in the strategic planning efforts, other than your larger airports, but the smaller ones, slower in strategic planning than typically your corporate world has been. So we embarked about a year and a half ago on creating a strategic plan. We hired a consultant, Telebuta, out of Richmond. And then they sort of led us through this process that resulted in a lot of outreach, both within our departments, within the tenant community at the airport, and then external within the stakeholders. We got a lot of feedback. We created a steering committee and started rolling up our shirt sleeves and planning a strategic plan. And fortunately, we're proud to say that got adopted by the board back in December. We then rolled it out to our employees and our stakeholders during the months of January, February. And then in March, we started planning and started identifying those action items that we need to do to be able to achieve the goals. So an overview here, this is sort of a one-sheeter that's kind of everything on a page, basically. And we've renamed our tagline. You might remember it used to be Let's Fly. It's now Stronger Together, Let's Fly. And that's a result of our DEI efforts, that part of the strategic plan. We redefined our mission, and it's basically, we wanted something simple that's accurate. And what do we do? And basically what we do is we connect our community with the world by operating Gulf Coast National Airport safely, reliably, and efficiently. So that's what we do. That's become our mission. Our vision is to strengthen and grow our region while serving as an industry leader, recognized for professionalism and excellence. So growing our region, really linked in with economic development issues. We understand that as an airport, we're integral to economic development, to the region's growth. We establish our pride and our guiding values and principles. And so we use the acronym PRIDE, and that stands for professionalism, both individually as an authority. That's how we want to see ourselves. We want to be highly responsible to stakeholders, not just reactively, but proactively responding to anticipating needs, anticipating problems, getting out in front of those things. We foster a culture of innovation. And this is, one of the things we heard about our employees was we do things because this is the way we've always done it. And some of you may have heard them in other agencies, but we want to really send a message to our employees that you can think outside the box. Come up with great ideas and let's challenge the status quo. And then we embrace diversity and we respect our differences and pursue an excellence every day in every way. We thought DEI was such an important part of our strategic plan that we created our own DEI statement as a part of that. And that reads, we promote diversity and inclusion for our employees, passengers, and community by embracing uniqueness, respecting differences, celebrating fairness, and cultivating equity. We arrive from different origins. We may have different destinations, but journeys are richer when we fly together. And what we're saying there, we've got the aviation theme to it, but what we're saying there is that we all, even us in this room, we all came from a different origin. And after we leave this room today, we're going to go to a different destination. But while we're here together, working together, our journeys are stronger, our efforts are stronger, our results are better. And that's really the message that we send through our DEI statement. And then lastly, we created 4 focus areas for our goals. Focus area number 1 is our employees, and that's dealing with anywhere from training to supervision to morale to balance and work-life issues. Our second one is our customers. That includes our stakeholders and airport users. The third one is our commitment. That is our DEI goal, and that addresses both DEI within the employee hiring and training and selection. It also expands to how we use small business and disadvantaged businesses and SWAM businesses, and it expands to the ADA airport access. One of the tactics or one of the goals we have is to create an updated airport audit, an ADA audit for the airport. And then it goes into Title VI, English speaking language, and how do we communicate, are signs appropriate, are websites appropriate for the popular languages in the area. And then our last one is our facility, and that's just really looking at making sure our facility is updated, looking at sustainability, efficiencies, and things like that. So each of those goals have a number of objectives. Each of them have a number of strategies and tactics that are our action items that we're working through. And then with that, we created a little 2-minute video that, if we take over. Do we have audio on this?
Sure. I think we can do that.
That might be something we'll need to send out to everybody.
That's fine.
You can send us a link.
Sure, I can pass through that. And This is just our outlook.
I'm sorry.
Look, you good. I think we're both hitting buttons.
You go.
Time of day, right? All right, so, we feel like our region population in the metropolitan service area of $1.7 million. We got a strong tourism base. We got the maritime industry, our military, government, all of those make our region attractive to airlines. And I tell you, not a day goes by that our marketing and air service departments aren't reaching out and trying to put together what makes to be a reasonable argument to the airlines to provide new service to different destinations. Being served by 7 low-cost and legacy carriers in the region allows our customers just various price options. You have some that have certain price points they want to fly on, some want to have certain amenities as they fly. So we've got the whole gamut there. We think we'll continue to see more near long-term growth with the ultra low-cost carriers. I can tell you Breeze intends to add more destinations. They're not stopping here. One of the things that we worked hard over that time on getting Breeze in here was we partnered with a lot of the economic development and tourism agencies. And so this wasn't just Norfolk Airport getting them here. We had to get a bunch of folks to the table and make some commitments. And we're very proud that not only did they come to Norfolk, but they established us as one of 4 crew bases. That brought a lot of jobs, a lot of income, and they're here for the long run. And then that's pretty much it. So at this point, I know you guys are running kind of tight on time. I'll be glad to answer any questions anybody may have.
So, Mr. Chairman, would be interested in any questions the CAC members may have.
Ms. Woods?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. I love Norfolk International Airport. I've used it. It's great. But I'm curious, the presentation, is this because you were needing those upgrade funds and that's why you were explaining that as the point of this is how much funds would you be needing, public funds, federal funds for the upgrade that you were talking about?
The point of this presentation
Correct.
is only to give you an update, certainly not asking any funding from this group.
Okay. I know you were talking about the remodeling part of, getting rid of a strip and having to do environmental studies, things of that nature. I thought that pertained to us.
No, we already have a funding plan for that.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, my interest in having the airport representatives come in is to just give you all an update on all the moving parts. As you can see, a lot happening at 1 or 2 international airports, a lot of positive things. But I know a lot of questions always about air travel and how we're preparing for the future. And I think this helps us understand that. So that was our goal for the presentation. But really interested in any other questions or comments.
So, I'm sorry. So from a risk management perspective, what have you learned from COVID and how are you prepared for the new environment, the just-in-case environment, where we're preparing for things that we just would not have anticipated, something like this? So how are you prepared?
By the way, speaking of COVID, the mask mandate's been extended to May 3rd now in the airports. So we learned a lot. One of the things that we had to focus on in the airport is we are considered critical infrastructure. And so where you saw a lot of businesses close the doors and send folks home, we're required to stay open. And we can't really downsize so much when we're staying open. If we're going to keep an airport open, we have to have the safe airfields. We have to have the safe runways. We've got to have, and that comes with doing our inspections, our airfield repairs, our wildlife mitigation. We have to keep the airport clean. In fact, our janitorial department worked harder than ever. And they actually became certified through the Global Biorisk Advisory Council in cleaning methods through the pandemic. But what we learned was that we are critical infrastructure. We have to be able to manage our operations, even though we have reduced staffing. Because in COVID, or during COVID, at times, we got low on staff and we had people out ill. So the continuity of operations, the business interruption plans, those things were important to us, and we learned a lot from them.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Years ago, the ports in the area were competing with each other. Now they've come together. What about Newport News or National News joining yours, or is that not possible, or competition is a good thing, or is there anything talking about cooperating with each other?
Competitively, there is not. Now, we do cooperate with each other in terms of everything except air service. So we do work with each other on security best practices. We share ideas. We may call each other, what contract to use for this or that, and we frequently share ideas with them. But in terms of air service, we are two totally different entities, and we don't really share corporate secrets, as I call them, with each other.
I don't see any other questions. Last call. Okay. Well, thank you so much for this important presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.
So our next item, I think, Keith, I think that can be a pretty quick overview, correct, on our regional economic development sites inventory. I think this is very timely. It'd be informative for our CAC members. So we'll turn this over to Keith Kennedy, our Deputy Executive Director.
Well, again, good afternoon. It's good to be with you all this afternoon. And I'll say back with you all, this is the second update that you have seen on this project, and we've got some good news to share with you. Given that we've got some new faces, I think I'll start out with a little bit of background, and kind of set the stage a little bit on the work that we're doing, what we mean by job creation, what we mean by site development, and talk about how this has kind of resulted in a region and even statewide priority initiative around site development. And then I'll bring you up to date on work we've been doing since we met with you all back in March 2020, and also talk a little bit about where I think we want to go next. We're not done by any means, but let me just kind of start out with, well, why? Why are we even talking about job growth, particularly private sector job growth in Hampton Roads? There's a lot of ways to tell this story. This just happened to be the one that got my attention. It's 40 metro areas in the US that are in our population range, about 1 to 4 million. And unfortunately, we're in the bottom 5 in that category when it comes to job growth. And this is a fairly old story in Hampton Roads. This is something that we've been talking about and working on for quite some time. So that's sort of the why that got us into this conversation. What can we do, particularly as a region, to move the needle forward in that area? Good news is we've got strong target industries in Hampton Roads, and many of these will sound very familiar to you all. These folks are doing well in our region. They are expanding. Some of the folks on this list are new and emerging industries that show great promise for growth in Hampton Roads. And as the slide implies, this is our target. These are the folks that we want to interest in expanding their facilities here in the region. Perhaps growing, bringing competitors in or other supply chain developers in to complement their uses. So that's really the focus of our work, is in those areas. And this is kind of important also when we talk about job growth and what we're going after. Economists call this the multiplier effect. There are certain types of jobs that have a significantly greater impact when you can attract them to our region. If you attract, for example, a manufacturer of wind turbines, there are going to be supply chain implications. Other folks are going to want to be around them. And that's going to bring new money in our economy. And so it's going to induce more funding for retailers, service industry types of jobs as well. So for that one job, the economist tells us 4.4 total jobs get created as a result. So that's again what kind of drives the public policy here. Go after those jobs that have the greatest impact in our region. Kind of also by way of background, we've touched on this a little bit, sort of what are businesses looking for when they look for places to expand? We're going to be talking about sites and buildings, the one in light blue there today, but we know there are other factors, and I think, Bob, you mentioned workforce is the one that we really, really are working hard on. So I want to just kind of give you that perspective. We know that sites are really, really important to our region, but not the only thing that we need to think about. Unfortunately, we've gotten some news, and this is kind of where I concluded back in March, that we actually don't have a good inventory of ready sites in Virginia and in our region. And this is some of the data that our state economic development agency has generated on the lost job opportunities that we've experienced across the state, the capital investment and the tax revenue that we've lost as a result. And they really dug into this, as we did too in the region, looking at our inventory of sites, evaluating those properties from the standpoint of their readiness, when could a business open on that property, as well as their competitiveness. And so over the past couple of years since we met, we've been getting really good data about how the state fares and also how the region fares. They broke it down across the state and found that we all have important work to do there. So as I said earlier, this created some momentum around, hey, we've got target industries that are looking at our region, and we've got an opportunity to grow jobs in our region, but we've got to focus on several things, and certainly one of those is sites. And this kind of gets to the reason why our agency is involved in this. We are not really a subject matter expert necessarily, but we were asked to bring in partners and help them and us understand together the challenge that we face and come up with some ideas and strategies to do better at this going forward. And every one of the folks listed on this table have been really key to making this a successful effort, from local officials, state officials, regional agencies, folks in the private sector, folks in the public sector, utility providers. I see a couple of civil engineers in the room. You can understand how complicated it is to develop a piece of property and bring that to market. So it takes a lot of folks working together, pulling together to make this work. One of the other real advantages that we had in Virginia is a yardstick had already been developed for us to help us define what we mean by a business-ready site. I'll just touch on a couple of things here. At the top of the readiness map, you've got basically raw land. Okay? It's been farmed or forested, no infrastructure, doesn't have the zoning that it needs to support one of those target industries. And at the bottom, you've got a site that's got all of those things, and you could be opening a business in 12 to 18 months on that property. All you need is a building permit. It's that gap, right, that we've been working on, trying to fill and work together to make that happen. So what are some key takeaways? What have we learned from this process? Clearly, we've confirmed this lack of what we call shovel-ready sites in our region and across the state. We've got much better data on the quality of readiness of the sites that we have right now. We've got a much better idea on how competitive these sites would be to a private investor. So we're in a much better position to prioritize the investments that we need to make in this property. So we can make much more intelligent decisions about where to go. Clearly, we know that by doing this, we can really make ourselves more competitive for attracting these industries. This will allow us, as I said earlier, to spend the funds on the projects that are going to have the greatest benefit downstream. Pick the sites, no matter what locality they're in Hampton Roads, that will achieve the greatest benefit for us. And this is a good fit for the Go Virginia program, which promotes collaboration among localities to work together to benefit the regional economy. So let me shift gears a little bit, and this is actually a project that we were working on back in March. We submitted a grant application to Go Virginia in September, and we're about 90% complete with this project in terms of the due diligence portions of that site work. And again, this will just kind of give you an idea of what's out there, where it's located, the condition that it was in at the time we began working on it. It's about 500 acres. This was a really good deal when you start to look at what it takes to develop these properties, about $1 million. We were awarded by Go Virginia to move these projects forward to that ready for business kind of a category. So probably in the wrapping it up stages of that project. And just actually last week, we submitted our second grant to Go Virginia. Again, looking at 3 properties. This is Chesapeake and 2 in Southampton County. Again, in various stages of readiness, but pretty close to having that category met on their property where all the infrastructure's in place, the zoning's in place, they're ready to go. This is about a $3.7 million request that our region and the state will soon be considering. Bring those funds forward for these localities to really kind of finish the job on these projects and make them more attractive. I'm calling this our scoreboard right now because our focus has been on get some points on the board, get some ready sites in Hampton Roads. This is obviously a map of our region. We've been working on this. Some of our localities have been working on this individually. We are moving that needle forward and making ourselves more attractive to attract these jobs. This is what we're thinking our next step is in the process. We want to go back to that original inventory and this time focus less on the short-term gains, kind of the easy wins, and look at the opportunities that we have to create the most jobs in Hampton Roads. We've got a couple of fairly large sites, may take fairly significant, relatively speaking, investments, but they will bring, we believe, a significant return on that investment and create a lot of new jobs for us in the process. I apologize, that's a lot of information for a fairly short period of time, but I'll pick up on our chair's comment earlier. We're available to answer questions for you all at any time. And there's a lot to digest here, and a lot perhaps for you all to think about. We'd be happy to do that with the time we've got this afternoon, or certainly after today's meeting. You all will be getting a copy of these slides and you can kind of dig into this a little bit deeper. So, Mr. Chairman, that's a brief version of this update. Happy to take any questions.
So I will look to this side of the room first for Jane. My natural inclination is to go to the left, but any questions from anybody out there? Okay, on the other side? Okay. Yes, sir.
I know that here in Chesapeake, and I'm sure that throughout Norfolk and Virginia Beach area here, that we have had a lot of discussion about that, the cable that's coming over from Europe, and that what kind of an impact that's going to have here as far as the access to that. And I know the city of Chesapeake has several meetings, and I guess that continues to go on, but I didn't see any mention of that. I don't know that it occurs in what you just presented to us.
It's a great question. It's a great question.
But it's really here. I mean, the work is already started in the city of Chesapeake, and here we are in Chesapeake, and I'm surprised that we don't really have something about that here.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, great question, and I'll take a stab at it. Okay. Bob, who's more familiar with that project, might want to jump in, but you're really getting at the heart of this, which is the infrastructure that you need as a region is a big part of being ready. You know, whether it's transit or roads or water, sewer, or internet service, all of these things make you attractive to those target industries. And this is a process to kind of check in to see how available that service is. So great question. And we've been making great progress on that one as well. And it will tie in very well, particularly to some of those target industry groups I think advanced manufacturing perhaps might be the best one. We maybe beginning to automate your manufacturing process, and that bandwidth can be really critical, just as an example. But a great question, and we're working on that one too.
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, to add to Keith's comments, so our Southside Fiber Ring, which will connect to those subsea cables, we actually had a groundbreaking ceremony in Virginia Beach last week as we begin construction on that exciting project. As Keith said, that's the type of new infrastructure that really is going to make all of these sites more competitive. When you think of modeling companies, you think of simulation companies, you think of financial trading on a global market, you think of those high-tech companies where milliseconds matter. They want to be near these cables, and the fact that we're going to have this this regional fiber network spreading that vast service throughout the region really adds yet another advantage to these sites that Keith's talking about. Mr. Chairman, I just want to restate what Keith stressed. I mean, this is such a critical issue for us, and I think we've learned so much as we've gone on this journey. But the bottom line is we have missed out, as Keith showed you, on job creation because we haven't been ready. And this is not just Hampton Roads. This is a Virginia challenge. Virginia just does not have enough shovel-ready sites. Keith, I'm always reminded from our visits to these other regions, we're going down to Raleigh-Durham and Research Triangle Park. They own the property, they have the zoning, they own the utilities. If you come down there, they can guarantee you're breaking ground within 6 months, right? Some of our sites, we can't compete with that, can we, Keith?
It was hard to take. I've been on some of those meetings with the investors and with the consultants that they work with, and after we kind of, loosened them up a little bit, it's like, well, tell us why you're not coming. I mean, literally, they are looking at Virginia and going to other states, and they told us, so we've got pretty good evidence that this will work for us. This will allow us to attract these industries that we have lost in the past. I should have mentioned, Bob, you made me think of this, that as an indication of the importance of this to the state, we're looking at a really historic commitment from the Commonwealth this year to invest in sites. $150 million is being considered by the General Assembly, I believe, right now as we speak, to put into the current budget to invest in these sites, again, to really turn this ship around and get us in a much more competitive posture. That doesn't quite put us up at the competitive stage, but it gets us a whole lot closer to what they're putting into this effort. So that would be matched at the local level and something we want to be prepared to take advantage of.
I forgot to turn it off. But have we, and I don't even know if this is the right kind of a question to ask, but it comes to my mind. If we look at Frank Williams Farms on 17, I don't know if we discussed it here, another meeting I was in, that is the largest contiguous piece of property in the state of Virginia that is owned by one person. That's Frank Williams Farms, all along 17, all the way down to the Carolina line.
We have, Mr. Jenkins, that's on everybody's radar right now, and it kind of gets to my first or second bullet here. We've got very competitive large properties in the region. That's one of the maybe 4 or 5 that we need to take a closer look at and see what's the effort that's needed to get it to that tier 4 level. What's the cost? What's the group of partners that we can bring together to make that happen? Is what this next phase is about. And my last bullet here is to explore regional approaches. You all may know that recently we proposed and our city managers agreed that a regional approach to this might make a whole lot of sense. Maybe we should get together and share in the cost and the revenues, even if that site, and I'll just take the Williams Farm as an example, is in Chesapeake. Other cities, the region as a whole, is going to really benefit from that being a competitive economic development opportunity. And we think there's some willingness for us to work together as a region on that process going forward. But that site is very much on the minds of folks who are working together on this initiative.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once, going twice? Frank?
Well, thank you, everybody. And again, as Keith stressed, any thoughts you have as you take this home, on things we ought to be thinking about, other locations or properties, gonna be completely honest. When large sites come up for zoning conversation about change, many times they're met with a lot of opposition, and a lot of times for good reason, right? But a lot of times for reasons that really slow us down in terms of making sites available for development. So, what Keith is leading here is just a very thoughtful process about where do we place employment opportunities in a way that it's most beneficial for us as a regional community. So really would be interested in any insights. If you just want to send us emails, but please, I think we can use all the help we can get on this one in terms of ideas, right, Keith?
Yeah, it's been kind of an exciting project, frankly, to work on this problem. We've been learning as we go along and getting better at this. As you said, Bob, willing to start at the local level with smart planning and zoning and infrastructure and being a good neighbor to where you plant these facilities, and we can really all win as a result of that.
And I don't know about everybody here, but we're all a bit competitive. I want to see a chart up there where Hampton Roads is way down on that far side. So I look forward to the day we can bring you one where we're starting to head the right direction on that slide. So thank you, Keith. Well, Mr. Chairman, just very quickly, our next meeting will be Thursday, June the 9th. What our preliminary plans are for Victor and I, based on our pre-prep call with our chair and vice chair, we would like to invite in next the Newport News Williamsburg International Airport representative. And in addition, Newport News is making a lot of progress on their multimodal center. So, Vice Chairman, thank you for bringing that up. And those connections from a transportation standpoint were put together very well. But Mr. Chairman, what I would ask is, really interested in agenda items that you're gonna really be interested in. So please, my request to the CAC members would be, please email me any ideas or suggestions that you have on topics that you're seeing in our region. They could be an issue, they could be a project. We don't know all the answers, but we can find someone who does, right? So we'll line up the right people to be here to have that conversation with you. We want to make these meetings as valuable to you all as possible. So really would invite you to send us suggestions on what we can do. And then I will in turn share with our chair and vice chair, and we'll get this thing scheduled out. Okay? So, Mr. Chairman, I have nothing more except to just thank everybody for their engagement.
Thank you, sir. Item 10, old new business. Anything we discussed previously that did not resolve itself or that we did not resolve? Any new business? Okay. An adjournment would be in order. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you. Second? Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. We stand adjourned. Thank you all for coming.